Welcome to the Self-Healing Revolution, where ancient wisdom and modern science meet. I am your host, Paige Pierman, owner of Love Yourself, an Ayurveda and Integrative Wellness Center based in Louisville, Kentucky, where I offer retreats, coaching, and online courses in Ayurveda. The purpose of this summit is to help you realize different avenues in which you can begin to heal your life through biohacking your body, mastering your mind, and elevating your soul. I'm honored today to share space with another Ayurvedic practitioner. Sachin Sudra is based in Alberta, Canada. He is an Ayurvedic Wellness and Nutrition educator and Certified Yoga Instructor. He teaches, empowers, and inspires people of all diversities and ages to cook Ayurvedic food for one's unique lifestyle and yoga practice. He specializes in teaching effective tools for regulation and self-healing through nutrition and wellness. Sachin is the founder of Sunistani Ayurvedic products and Namaste Cooking, a grassroots community-based company that set out to educate and inspire people on the ancient Indian healing art of Ayurveda. He acts as a community advocate for preserving this ancient Indigenous knowledge through lectures and classes. He believes in returning to the kitchen as a communal gathering space for resilience through health and wellness. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Namaste, Paige. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you. So we share Ayurveda near and dear to both of our hearts. And I love the last part of your bio, the kitchen being the heart of the home. And I feel like it's like the healing. If there was a heart in a home, it would be the kitchen where our soul loves to reside.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So just tell me a little bit. Let's just start off with your journey into Ayurveda and how it's evolved a little bit.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks to our audience and everyone who's come today. This is awesome. I just wanted to, first of all, acknowledge that I am living and playing on Mohkinstsis, the Treaty 7 territory, the Blackfoot and Siksika nations, and Region 3, and to all our ancestors who came before us and to all of our elders. So let's get started. About a little bit about me. I was basically born into Ayurveda because it comes from the culture I'm from. So everything practiced was just natural. I really started practicing it myself in my early 20s. And that had a lot to do with just like self-care, the spiritual connection to the culture, which was the fundamental basis around of it for me. And I guess later in my years, I had ADHD diagnosed since I was 7 years old, and into my later years, I found the practice of Ayurveda and yoga speaking was really helpful. Yeah.
So, are you from Canada originally, or you were raised with it in Canada, or from India? Were you raised here? I mean, in Canada, not in the US.
I was born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, and my parents are from East Africa. And my grandparents settled from India during the partition in 1947. So when they came, and now I'm here, my parents, yeah.
Yeah. So what was the point at which you realized, okay, the Ayurveda is helping me? Like I was raised with it. I know it. I'm familiar with it. But where was that transition of, okay, I was raised with it and now I see that this is a remedy for what I'm going through?
From day one, because it's what my mother raised me with when she had me as a child. So the whole practice of Ayurveda stems, in my opinion, really within the matriarch, because it's a place of how giving birth was given. Now, my mom gave birth to me in a regular hospital, which was different than how it would traditionally happen. For example, doulas, Indigenous cultures that use birthing traditions. But for me, just from the food I ate, the spiritual quality of prayer, mantras, and all those aspects, it was integrated. For me, when I got out of my more ego years in my 20s, I really dived more into my spiritual aspect, and that rooted me back to my culture, where I was from. And that really came when I went back to art school, because that's a place we really have to contemplate and think about things.
It was a blessing that you had those tools. at such a young age, to be able to have a toolbox that most people aren't given.
Well, it wasn't really, I had to really rediscover it as well,
Mhm.
because, I come from families like all of our householder families in the West here, where we're busy working, um, came from an immigrant family. So it's just all about survival. And it was more into my later years, I found in my early 20s, where I was like, hey, these things are really good actually for me, and these help out a lot. And
Yeah.
and that's what it was like, let's go, let's use these. Yeah.
Yeah, so we really wanted today, we really wanted to dive into Ayurveda and look at mental health. So tell me how you've worked with Ayurveda in terms of helping people in their mental health, especially with attention deficit disorder in your practice.
Perfect. Well, just to give you a little bit, so Ayurveda itself is an ancient indigenous system of healthcare, and it was designed to prepare us for the seasons and living in harmony with life. It's a preventative science. For myself, just to give you a little background of what I'm doing right now, I work as an Ayurvedic clinical practitioner, and I work with First Nation Indigenous youth in Canada, giving Ayurvedic cooking classes, teaching Hatha yoga and meditation. I'm working with like Yoga Alliance as well, providing Indigenous yoga for First Nation communities and Indigenous elders. My work that I do, which helps people out with ADHD and people who are just stressed out, who are in chronic pain, kind of that whole roundabout, because we find that disease usually comes from the nervous system, which can be under stress a lot of times.
Mm.
So through that, my work consists of yoga, pranayama, breathing techniques, kriyas, cleansing techniques, meditation, mindfulness for the mind, body work, using my hands to work with people, using marma acupressure points, which really helps with the pranic field of an individual's body, aromatherapy, nutrition, phytotherapeutics, the whole coaching and guidance aspect from an Ayurvedic lens, which can help create more balance for an individual. But with ADHD in mind, one of the most, and for anyone for that instance, taking an Ayurvedic lens is beautiful because it promotes self-sovereignty for one's health and life. And I feel this is really necessary right now in the present time we're in our world.
Right. And I like how you said, in Ayurveda, it said that Vata dosha is the king of all doshas that drives the other doshas out of balance. And it really is through the nervous system, right? And we're living in high states of stress that has a direct impact on our nervous system. So are you
Yeah.
seeing, you're working with Indigenous youth? Are you seeing, obviously there's stress. How are you seeing these tools helping the youth right now?
Well, it's a really interesting place because for over 150 years, we've seen how residential schools and colonialism have created a lot of trauma for these communities. And since they're being built back, there's a lot of trauma in those communities and with people. And as we know in Ayurveda, how it is linked internally in our bodies. A lot of fun classes I've been doing with youth have been around just having fun and promoting like Ayurvedic cooking classes,
Mm.
creating, and we work in my apothecary studio as well, where we do self-care. We learn to make body oils, work with our senses, with plant medicines, create yummy foods that taste good. So that's really livening again on senses, what you're tasting, what you're smelling, what you're doing physically, what you're consuming. And this is all done in respect to another's culture, because bringing in your own culture into someone else's culture can kind of not be the right thing to do. So I really keep a beautiful line of it being things that we're all using every day, but not trying to infiltrate someone else's cultural practice. So it's been really honorable, and yeah, I'm loving it. It's great. We're doing some classes which are really helping out people. And I think it's coming back to what we're all talking about here, which is wellness and health.
Yeah, I like what you said about, and this touches me near and dear to my heart, is you said that it helps with trauma. And, they have obviously been traumatized, and it's in that ancestral healing that needs to occur. And I don't think that in the mental health space yet, people have really understood how profound Ayurveda is in terms of helping with trauma. And I say that because it seems as if it's a different field. Like, it's not like mental health can be separate from Ayurveda, but unless you understand the ways in which Ayurveda works on the body, then you wouldn't see how it would really help with mental health. But when you realize that most of these practices, right, really calm and pacify the nervous system. So, when you're in a stress-based state, then you can't even begin to access that until the nervous system has found some sense of homeostasis.
Definitely. And I, as I'm sure like everyone who's been on these calls knows, that like the connection of the body, mind, and spirit, they cannot be separated. But when we look at Western science, and it's such a beautiful practice as well, because it helps people. But I think there's more of a very important guideline around how the spiritual quality is interconnected in every aspect. And I think the more we do that, we're going to find harmony. Hence, a lot of elders who speak on children mention, get out to nature, get off your phones, or to everyone else. And just like small things of connecting back to your own personal nature. Like yoga in Ayurveda, at its essence, it's a 5,000 or older practice. And the intention around it is to create total transformation for an individual. It's accessible to all humankind, and it's not bridged by race or color. And it is for all, most definitely, depending on where we're living in seasons.
Yeah, I call it the medicine for the people, because, like you said, it crosses over religion, it crosses over, all of those. It's not, people ask me, like, is it a religion? And, yes, it comes from the ancient Vedic text, but that doesn't mean that it's dominating what your belief system is. It's, and it's not only that, it's, medicine for the people, because it doesn't have to be expensive. It's like you said, you can just connect with nature. You can be able to just put your feet in the ground and that be therapeutic. You can, like you said, just working with calming the nervous system down alone through aromatherapy, or just the basic act of cooking, the basic act of just being present with what we're eating.
Yeah, I think that's one really interesting thing about India as a country, because you'll notice in India, they've accepted any religion or culture. So Christianity's come over, so many cultures. There's never been a guide of preventing out cultures from coming and residing there. So even in Hinduism alone, as a religion, it's always been to accept everyone. And I feel that's like one reason why we see, for example, Ayurveda is so accessible. And it is becoming more accessible with individuals such as yourself, I noticed, Paige, where you're showing to your community as well. And it's pretty beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. So I still want to talk a little bit like about trauma, like as you've been able to work with the youth, how have you seen, like, give an example of how you've seen this transformation occur, some testimonials about what you've witnessed.
Well, for example, like how I've found it's been helpful for example, youth or just people I work with on a regular basis, is that it's helping them relax. It might be motivating for them as well. They might find a breathing technique, for example, when they're imbalanced, and how they can take that with them and use that as something to support them when they're alone. Because most of the work we do for ourselves is when we're alone. It's not when we're around people. It's when we go within ourselves. So I find that really helpful, as well as a lot of my meditation and classes in yoga that I teach online. They're more based on relaxing the mind and the body, creating more balance, but finding a way to really share that with others in an easy fashion, so it works, because it does. I've also found a lot of the like routine So the most important things, like how many people wake up in the morning, the first thing they do is grab their phone and look at it. And it's more about starting your day properly. So sharing this with students as well around, you're waking your self-care. Like the first thing you do is cultivate yourself, go into your inward spirit. Work first for you, then others. That's what I really like to bring into it. If that's meditation, working out, a cold dip, a sauna, walking, some Tai Chi. These teachings are ancient, but they're beneficial because people's behaviors, and in dealing with to help build up our emotional cognitive balance to support our lives with safety and responsibility are critical, especially right now. So we find that with mental health, stress, day-to-day reality of living. If we look right now, like at the society over the past 2 years, you can see a reflection of tenseness. So that's been a really big one for me. Also teaching in Ayurveda, as you know, in seasons. So Christmas season should be the most funnest time, most wonderful time of the year, but there's a lot of stress that gets involved. And in a sense, when we look at the environments, maybe not where you are, but where we are in Canada, it's minus 30 right now. So it's colder.
Wow.
And in any place in the world, our weathers do shift, but just how with the prakriti, the elements, how our physical bodies understand and feel that rhythm. So when things slow down, if our minds and bodies are having to produce and go, it can be quite harmful. Then we find stress comes, people tend to get sick. We have a lot of mental health issues. Like violence tends to happen. So overall, I think the point of what I like to do is I like to share something that's been given to me from my ancestors and from living in a different environment and being able to take these seeds of wisdom from our past teachers and ancestors and share that with others, because the commonality is the intention is to help others out.
Yeah, and you were talking about the holiday season. There's this idea of there's a lot of activity. It creates a lot of movement. And, this time of year, the earlier part of the winter, we're taught in Ayurveda, just to kind of tease that one out a little bit, we're taught in Ayurveda that there's a sense of air and ether that increases in the early part of the winter. And that creates a lot of movement. We see that in the macrocosm, and then it's reflected back in the microcosm. So like shopping and like getting ready for the holidays and cooking the meals and having a lot of people around. But what Ayurveda actually calls upon us to do when there's this external in the macrocosm movement, right, is that we do the opposite, that we slow down and that we turn inward, like with the winter solstice. So we come inside of ourselves and we do just the opposite. This is actually a time when the days are shorter and we should do less. But interestingly enough, our culture has taught us to do more. And so, yeah, people will be hearing this. Obviously, we're getting the summons after Christmas and the New Year when it will be shared. So hopefully people will hear that message that, in the winter, there's this desire to like do a lot, but really, like you said, people are going to get sick if they don't honor the body's need to come within.
Yes. And I also really feel it has to do a lot with empathy, which is really being taught in the West too on so many ends. I was just at a bank and a woman was so angry because I think she was short $20 because she wasn't able to pay her transaction fee. So she couldn't cash her check. And I wish I didn't get her in time because I wanted to give her some money. And I think the whole capitalism structure is quite opposite to a spiritual nature. And my goal with my work is to really bring a lot of more of that embodiment and love to others, because I feel with that, we're actually going to be able to maintain things. And again, that starts with ourselves as well as practitioners, whoever we are. Like the work always has to be happening, or we can't really give to others too. Mm-hmm. I guess with that note, like most important thing, like I tell a lot of my clients right now, especially, is take time out, rest, heal, talk to friends, family. For professionals, reach out to your community or resources. Your routine again is essential. Starting the day off right. It's not waking up, think about 100,000 things, do the work internally first, however that works out for you. For example, before I came on our call today, like the one thing I did to make sure was I went to the gym, I did some yoga, I went to the sauna, I regulated myself, I ate to ground. It's just really important to do those things and eat well and have fun. Make it simple. For a lot of people, they can't eat well because the price of food is going up right now. And that's a really fun one for me because I grew up on a pretty low-income diet, and rice and lentils can be made into something amazing. And even if you're eating meat-related diets too, there's ways you can integrate things specifically like spices, which can be can have a really beneficial effect for emotions, your liver, digestion, the way your mind's feeling as well. That's more of a heavier aspect, which is tamasic when it gets there. But so those are definitely just 4 things I want to just say.
Yeah, that is a great one, because I think that goes back to kind of what I was saying is like our health doesn't have to be expensive, but we are confronting at this time what's considered food shortages and an increase in inflation within food, which can make that feel unattainable for many. And yet you're reminding us, and what Ayurveda does is that the breath doesn't cost anything. Meditating doesn't cost anything. Moving our body doesn't cost anything. Yes, the food does. There's an expense, but then I think Ayurveda also calls upon us to look what's in our own environment and utilize what's in season and what's right in front of us versus, like I tell my clients all the time, like if you're getting food from South America and it's not in season, like you're getting stuff from South America and it's wintertime, that's not what the body's calling for right now. So I think Ayurveda actually is a very affordable medical system. We can't change the fact that there is the cost of food rising. But if we all did our breath work, if we did body movement practices, if we meditated, our stress levels would be down and we wouldn't have, say, high blood pressure or diabetes or mental health issues to the same extent that are costing the healthcare system a significant amount of money and resources to sustain this lifestyle pandemic that we've been in.
Yeah, so with yoga, Ayurveda, the neuroscience behind it, when we look at pranayama, which are breathing techniques, they help regulate our brain activity, our waves, our nervous system. Chanting, again, that can be considered religious, but it's praise unto the Lord, it's praise unto whoever, if it's some kind of sound in general, anciently was looked at as a true science, but a complete attachment to nature as well. And devotion being devotion, whatever someone might be devoted to is a really important one as well. If you're devoted to the clamshell or you're devoted to an idol, those things can really be helpful too. And I just want to point out that when we look at Ayurveda, a lot of stuff is really embedded in Indian sculpture and iconography for a reason, because of how it was cultivated. It wasn't cultivated as just a science of like massage your body with oil and do yoga and breathe a couple times and say Om. It was really looked at just not the self-care connectivity, but the connectivity to the whole universe and how that's connected to an individual and how we're a part of that. And we look outside of ourselves. There's just more love, compassion, and I think it's about fine-tuning oneself in a sense, like what Vastu is when you're living in a home that's fine-tuned for someone.
Yeah, most people don't know what Vastu is. So do you want to explain? Because most people don't know what it is.
Okay, hi everybody. So like, feng shui, or the word faith, sacred geometry, feng shui is like a practice of placement of things in your home space, and it creates more harmony. Or sacred geometry, the word itself goes back to ancient structures that are built. So it's the same thing in practice, but Vastu goes a step further because it's said to be probably one of the first. And it's where using mathematical formulas in a space that you create according to an individual's resonance, which is calculated through their birth time, because an individual is conceived on Mother Earth during a certain time. And that's connected to astrology, which is connected to sound and time, and to numbering, a numbering system where you can create a vibrational space for an individual. So I come myself from the Vishwakarma lineage and tribe. They were temple builders, craftsmen. So that's why I have a pretty big relationship to arts, and probably why I dive further into what I do. And I've spent time building these kinds of structures, which has been beautiful and fun. And yeah, just how it's there to help out all of humanity. Again, we should have another talk on that another time though, because
Yeah. But in terms of mental health too, like you do bring up a good point, like Vastu being, if you want to call it feng shui of Ayurveda or the Vedic system, it calls us also to bring in an awareness about our environment space. And so it's like, if we're living energetically in a space that doesn't feel in harmony to us, I talk about kitchen sadhana, like I used to, like do some live courses, and now they're obviously online. That changed with COVID, but like just looking at the kitchen, if the dishes aren't done at the end of the day and you come back into the kitchen and like the counters are not cleaned down and the floor is not swept, then you're walking into a place of disharmony, like right from the get-go. It's like just making your bed right in the morning. It doesn't have to be complicated, but creating a space, the energetics of that space can be deeply healing and inviting when you come back into your home, when you come back into your kitchen, when you come back into your bedroom. And you're talking about mental health, right? So, when our whole life is in disarray, or it's discluttered, or we're not making conscious choices just in our environment, that can have a significant effect on our mental health. I know, just like when my laundry is not done, I see it piling up, like it can cause this nervous system, like frustration and like, it's like, but if we cultivate and we stay with these daily conscious choices that you're talking about, I mean, these are like moment to moment choices that we're making, then our mental health is in a better space because we're creating a harmonious world all around us, breath, meditation, you said sound, the environment, because really, like, truth be told, in Ayurveda, everything can bring in harmony or disharmony depending on how we work with the world around us through the five senses, right?
Yeah, definitely. The five senses are huge. And just look at the disharmony in our world. We've gone from like a lot of things to do with human rights, wars, like everything. But I think the bottom line is that human beings, how much are we actually evolving in 2022 to 23 from like over like 100 years ago? Like the technology is like rising and getting 5,000 times smarter than a human being does, like literally. So how strong is your microprocessor? Think of that as like your brain. And think of your battery. Your battery is like your heart. And as you mentioned, the five senses, go back to looking at yourself, your body, and it's kind of like the intellect, the ego sense, and then you have sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Those are all things that you can tangibly grasp. Like you look at a phone, you eat something, you touch. If your mind, and then there's the mouth, the hands, the legs, our organs, our reproductive organs. They're all sensory. They're all things that give us sensory input. And there's a state of sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic, which represent energies. We usually tend to live in the rajasic state in our world because we're always moving, going, doing things, producing, creating, fixing laundry, eating, working. Then we have the sattvic side, which is the spiritual, harmonious, being in nature, loving, relaxing, poetry, art. Then over to the tamasic side, which can be more heavier, dense, lethargic, congruent. We need all three of those kind of energies to create harmony. And with that, when we look at that, the elements, sure, of sound, touch, form, taste, smell, those all relate to our elements of ether, air, fire, water, and earth. So I really like to take people into a journey with Ayurveda and have them understand their physical body and their spiritual divine body as it's connected to all of those elements, the ether, air, sound, what our sight is, or touch. It reminds me of a dog or an animal. Like their instinct is immediate, and sometimes as humans, our instinct, it might not be exact. We might wait, stop, think about something. I think going back to our natural abilities through practices of like yoga, meditation, Ayurveda, self-care, all your connected practices that you feel right for you, to connect you more back to nature, but to be doing internal practices to tap into the technology that our body holds. Sadhguru talks a lot about this a lot from the Isha Foundation. And I really feel it would be awesome if every human being had a spiritual practice, and had something that they could, just like going to nature and even ice climbing, let's say, because I feel those things really create more harmony for us.
Yeah, you said that, you wish that everybody would have a spiritual practice. And I believe that for humanity, mostly that in Western medicine, the allopathic model, which I'm never dissing ever, it serves its purpose. Ayurveda serves a different purpose, if you will. But looking at the physical body and you're trying to heal it from just the physical, it's never going to access the other parts of your being that need your attention as well. And I believe because we're talking about mental health, this is a really important thing that you just said, because when we're only looking at the mind in terms of looking at it from a physical structure and studying the mind and what it does, we can't access the full capacity of healing the mind if we haven't looked at what you just said, which are these qualities, these gunas, the psychology of the mind, right? Being what you just described, which is sattva, rajas, and tamas. If we don't understand the subtleties of the way that we're interacting with our inner world to our outer world, because you brought up the five senses. The five senses is our portal, our mechanism in which we access the outer world and we bring it to our inner world. And we can have great control over our mental state when we understand what you just said, which is our five senses. Our action organs is taking information from the external into our internal. And that is a practice in and of itself. But you took that even further and said, our mental health, like, how can we really work with the subtle aspects of our being if we don't look at our spirituality, if we don't look at our connection to our outer world, to our inner world? And that inner dialogue that you're talking about is really the mental space of spirituality. It's the mental space of the deeper meaning of life, of the outer world that's very stressful, that feels chaotic, that feels very rajasic, that feels very much outside of our control. And yet we're having to bring it somehow into our inner world and make a landscape internally. And that picture, like you said, if we can't access the spiritual, then we won't have a deeper dialogue of what that means, right?
Yeah, and the spiritual practice is going to be different for everybody. For example, Los Angeles, you're in Compton, it's going to be rap. You're going to go to, like Northern Alberta, it's going to be country music. You're going to go to India, it's going to be Carnatic music, or whatever practice it is that someone does. If it's lighting a fire with their friends, doing something that's more in harmony, I feel will be a very important thing. And even BK Shivani said one thing that I started doing with some of my clients, because they don't know how to meditate. So you don't need to know how to meditate. The only thing you need to know to do, take 1 minute every 59 seconds, every 59 minutes, pardon me, and just for 1 minute, you can put on your alarm clock on your phone. Just close your eyes and just breathe and focus on your breathing. And just feel your body, even if there's 1,000 things going on, and try that. And I found things like that very helpful for busy householders who are have families and serving the community, the business community, just the community at large, can be very helpful. And in that sense, that's looking into the like our cognitive brain and working with harmonizing and regulating that, but you're automatically working on your heart as well. When we're conceived at birth, our hearts are developed before our brain does. So they consider that our heart to be our first brain. It's so intelligent, so we should work with that. And this is why we're here today, to help and share these things with others. And on the note of the heart and ADHD, I've seen, and I think Dr. Gabriel Mate is a great example of just showing how stress is one of the major components of hyperactivity disorders related to stress. And because of those things, children are medicated. Medication plays a great role in our society. Myself as well, I used to take medication. I don't right now. But when I did, it did help me. But one of the most important things that took care of me was a practice that was physical, being in nature, doing something creative, having a loving support system. A lot of families now don't have those choices because they're very busy with having to just put food on the table and pay the bills. And for that, I feel that Ayurveda, yoga, programs like these, being given access into our public schools, all areas of education for the youth, for young ones, is important, and especially for our working generations and our elders. The important things in Ayurveda to note is that young people and elders are respected, and children are known as like the gurus and the elders, and they should be taken care of because they're the ones who embody the wisdom, but they're in maturing bodies. So with that in mind, that's one reason why I feel it's really important for us as a whole unitary movement to do, in a sense, which Paige talks a lot about, love yourself. I have some amazing practitioner in British Columbia who has a business called Love Yourself. And I first learned about this word, love yourself, from Dr. Hansaji from the Yoga Institute. It's the oldest yoga
Interesting.
institute.
I never knew existed outside of me. So it's obviously in the minds and hearts of other practitioners, for sure.
Yes. And Paige, as you're bringing it to the world, and it's just more of loving yourself. And there was one of our teachers taught us, open your arms, hug yourself, rock yourself, and say, I love myself. But even in that act, you're opening up your heart, your clavicle muscles. You're bringing more oxygen to your heart. You're wrapping your hands and then grasping your clavicle, your chest. And when you rock yourself, you're rocking your whole spine. And as we know, your whole spine's connected to your chakras, or your whole spinal cord's connected to all the organs in your body, including our brain. So it's kind of a nice way to open that up through the science of the body.
Yeah. You said some things that resonate with me. I was diagnosed in my childhood with attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and was put on medication in my grade school years. And I remember very clearly feeling as if the person that I needed to be was like silenced through the medication. I felt like I wasn't me. I felt like I didn't identify with the way the substance was interacting with my body. And it really felt confining and wrong. And it didn't resonate with my being at all. And it turns out my dad was not for it. My mom was. They were divorced, and he ended up fighting and getting it so legally I didn't have to be on it. But then I wasn't given any tools. So I was like, we kind of started this conversation about a blessing that you were given these tools through the lineage of Ayurveda to you. And now you're giving this gift to other youth. And it's so important because so many topics have come up today about affordability of food, trauma, the system of the way the school system is now, how we're living our lives. And I think for some people, it may feel inaccessible when we're in that survival mode, that trauma that you're talking about. But I love what you've shared today, because we can move our bodies, we can breathe, we can have pranayama. I wish when I was a 7 or 8-year-old, that someone had come to me like you are with the youth and said, okay, let me just teach you how to breathe. Let me teach you how to cook a meal. Let me teach you how to just sit with yourself for a minute and listen to your breath and connect with your heart. They seem so simple, and yet they're so profound. And you said something else that when I was in a yoga class once and I was rolling into a ball and squeezing myself, a teacher said, I want you to tell yourself, the name of my business, right? Love yourself. So I rolled into a ball, and she said, I want you now to hug yourself like you did. So knees were pulled into my chest and I had curled in, and she said, tell yourself that you love yourself. And it was the first time I'd ever said, I love you, Paige. And to this moment, it brings tears to my eyes, because in that very moment, I had never had anybody tell me to love myself, ever. And in that moment, that yoga class, I curled in a ball and I said, I love you, Paige. And just tears, just completely went down the side of my face. So these yogic practices, these simple things that they seem simple and they're profound, and yet for some reason, we don't access them on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, I think a really good access point for anyone looking who has ADHD, which helped me out when I was in my 20s, to professionals or adults. Scattered Minds by Dr. Gabor Mate is a really good book, which has a lot of access points that Paige talks about. I think we live like in a pretty brutal society. If you really look at it's about, we're looking at materialism. You're comparing yourself to what you see on a screen on social media, because that plays such a large role compared to the 1980s. I'm sure people out there know about, Mac computers, black green screen versus full-on reality. And how is someone in any age going to look at themselves when they're seeing all those things and it's completely bombarded to them? So in a sense, we need to take responsibility for ourselves as people who are we're contributing to society, helping those around us, and bringing positive encouragement and motivation for all. Because ADHD is definitely far different for women than it is for men in terms of the differences. And boys are more, hyperactive. They're doing things where for women it can be a little bit different. It's not so much they're acting out. And for myself, as a man, I really noticed those things from the attention side, which can be difficult. And even more of a reason why, if our societies are really based more on materialism and just this whole outward way of what we see, it's a beautiful, important place to more go within and also remember your active play, what you enjoy doing, having fun with, because those things are really which are going to generate more energy, prana, chi internally for oneself. So doing what one is actually good at. I have a nephew who has ADHD. He's quite younger now, and the one thing when I look at how can I help someone like this out, because they're on their tablets like all the time. It's just the new generations. It's just how they are, and not all, but a lot. And the one thing it makes me think about, how can I help young boys, all children out, and it reminds me play and doing play of things that people enjoy, and getting back to their creative sense.
So profound. Yeah. Yeah, this becomes this device becomes the entertainment, and then the entertainment is like, when do I sing? When do I dance? When do I hold my lover? When do I, snuggle my child and be in that present moment, that eternal now that is available always to us? Like you said, you could be in LA, it could be rap, you could be elsewhere. Like, what is it that your culture is like enjoying? Like, where's that prana? Like, where's it calling you to be in the play, to be in the eternal now, to be in the present?
Yeah, I think the consciousness state is really important, and I have nothing wrong with technology. Like, here we are, like, you're all the way over in the south. I'm here in the north of Canada. It's like we're able to have a discussion, and even our technologies, they're great. I just think we just have to create more balance. And I feel that that balance comes individually with each person's style, and it's what works best for one. And I really hope through Ayurveda in the West, we can use this as a noble, accessible for all practice to help people with their mental, physical health, so they're more embodied. As we see, it's really getting big in our world right now. So
we're looking at it, like we are going beyond the time of speed. We're like technology's like becoming AI, artificial intelligence is becoming more and more the norm, which is why I think the resurrection of Ayurveda, the self-healing revolution, it's like at some level we have to counter what we're doing to our bodies and our minds. If we don't make a conscious choice, like you said, through the five senses, through our organ actions, through our mind, if we don't create some conscious awareness around the stress, the speed, and the structure in which we're living, then it's kind of wreaking havoc on our lives. And I think that Ayurveda is an antidote to slowing down, to being present, to making mindful choices. I have an expression, I say it all the time. I say, yoga teaches you like on the mat, like how to be in the present moment. And then Ayurveda is everything that happens off the mat. It's, what you drink when you wake up in the morning. It's how you choose to eat. It's how you choose to breathe. It's how you choose to play. It's how you choose to, deal with your five senses, right? So it's like yoga is the spiritual practice on the mat, and then we can take that out into the world. And I think that's why they're sister sciences. Like this is a great anecdote to what we're experiencing collectively right now.
yeah, and I also feel that be on the mat or off the mat, be at work, be in a argument, be in the middle of the forest, or just at work, working at McDonald's, whatever it might be, it's interconnected. So when you look at Ayurveda and yoga and you're on a mat, you're breathing, there's a deeper awareness that you learn to cultivate through learning these practices of how you're connected to everything around you. So when you talked about time is actually timeless in that state, because you have such a awareness of just not your body, but all the other layers that exist. And it's always going back to the origin of your consciousness being your pranayama, your heart. You can see this in art a lot. Like you see lotuses, and you see that a lot in like art that's spiritual, like in Buddhist traditions, as these plants grow in swamps. They're muddy, but they're so beautiful when they emerge outwardly. It's kind of that poetry around, like when we breathe, a lotus emerges within the cave of our heart, and that's because it's this unfolding of that state. So
yeah,
definitely agree with you on the senses, but we need more good practitioners bringing this out to others as yourself.
yeah.
Thank you.
I love the alchemy there of the lotus, the alchemy of coming from, we've talked about some harder states of life, there's some heavy stuff out there. And yet if we truly, what you said, I mean, if we go into that spiritual path, then we can alchemize what may be very, very difficult or hard, trauma, poverty, not being able to afford food. If we can really step into that spiritual path, then that can become a lotus. And it's amazing. And I love the metaphors that you've given us this evening.
Yeah, and it's going to be harder for others out there because we all have a different story, and it's harder or different for all of us. And I feel for that reason, we need really good practitioners practicing Ayurveda, not and really embodying the whole practices of it. Because the one thing we find is when someone learns something, it's from their country or practice, take what you need from it, but also acknowledge and have acknowledgement for the full aspect where it comes from, because that's when erasure happens, and then you kind of lose all the other aspects of it. I encourage anyone, if you have a chance, go to India. If not, go see Paige.
I
And
myself have not made it to India, and yet I'm so steeped in the science and the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda. It will happen in time.
oh yeah,
COVID definitely hasn't made that easy, but I know that it will happen. It's only a matter of time before I get there. And
no,
yeah, so well, thank you so much. I mean, this has been a lovely conversation with you this evening. Is there anything you'd like to share before we end?
just want to say, hey, thanks everyone for having me a part of this call. If you have any other questions about Ayurveda from my end, I'll just post some things to Paige. You can reach
Yeah.
me at sunistani.com. Also, every Wednesday I offer by donation or free for all yoga meditation classes,
Oh, wonderful.
7:30 a.m. and p.m. MST time. So you're more than welcome to join. Send the link to her, and just remember, like Paige will say, love yourself. Namaste, be well, and thank you.
Yeah, I will share that link for sure. So everyone's allowed to offer a free gift, and so I will definitely include the free gift of your evening donation based class. So that will be included.
No problems. Thank you so much.
Thank you.